flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everybody. First thing on our agenda tonight will be the public hearing on the water system improvements. And this will be a repeat of the Zoom meeting we did 2 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago. 2 meetings ago. Mel, are you getting the sound okay back there? Madison, you all right? There are microphones throughout, and if you have a question, I'd ask that you raise your hand, come to the podium, and address your question that way. We're going to stiffen up our decorum when it comes to meetings and proper use of the podium and stuff like that. So without further ado, I'll turn over to Colette Anderson from Great West Engineering.
All right.
If you can't hear her, let her know and we'll get her a mic.
Okay, hopefully you'll be able to hear me okay. I can always talk louder too. I've got several little kids, so I have to raise my voice a lot. Okay, so if any of you joined the Zoom call a few weeks ago, we talked about the water system improvements that the city of Choteau is, at this point, just investigating but pursuing. And so this, as Chris said, is going to be kind of a repeat of that presentation. So basically what we're going to talk about is the fact that the city has identified some needs in the water system, in the public water system that serves the community. And so we are working with them to develop a preliminary engineering report. And so we're going to talk about what that PER, you'll hear me say preliminary engineering report, what that is, what that process entails, and then what the outcome of it is. And then also, in relationship to any proposed improvements, we did an environmental assessment to determine any significant impacts to the environment. And then, finally, to accept public comment on the project, answer questions as best I can. So a preliminary engineering report is a technical document. I actually have a copy of one, the one that I completed for this project. So it's a few pages long, but it is a technical document. It is required by the funding agencies, and so the city is using this to support applications for grant and loan funding to minimize any financial impact on its users in Choteau. And so basically it provides a technical analysis, an environmental assessment, and again supports the grant applications. The PER process involves evaluating the condition, the performance of your existing infrastructure, and identifying any deficiencies that may exist, and then developing solutions to address any of those deficiencies. As part of developing the alternatives to address the deficiencies, we develop cost estimates, and then we look at what potential funding sources exist that can help you pay for the improvements. And then, of course, we hold meetings like this in order to try to involve the public to the greatest extent possible. And then the outcome is this document. So one of the first steps in the PER is to identify the planning area. What exactly are we looking at? What are we trying to study? And so in this, for this report, we are looking at basically the city of Choteau, basically your town limits. We didn't expand the area to any great extent beyond the city limits, but accounted for some growth. There's going to be naturally some infill, there may be a subdivision somewhere, something like that. So we look at existing populations and we try to project some amount of growth so that any improvements that you may implement will not only serve the needs of your community today, but also for some time into the future. So currently the population in Choteau is estimated around just over 1,700 people. That differs than the population that's actually served by the public water system. In your community, it's a little bit unique compared to a lot of similar communities in Montana in that there's several areas of town that are served by private wells and that are not connected to the public water system. And so we dove deeper into the actual service population, and that's just over about 1,000 people. And that's our best estimate, based on conversations with city staff. So in order to project some amount of growth, as I said, to allow for growth on the system over the next design period, which is a 20-year period, we anticipated a 5.5% annual growth But in addition to that, we looked at what would happen if all those private well users were connected to the public system. I know in this last year there was some pretty significant flooding that put some of those private wells at risk of contamination, and there was even a recommended boil order at one point. And so it's just not something the city's currently pursuing right now, but something that may happen in the future. So that gives us an estimated design population in 20 years from now, in 2040, of just over 1,900 people. So as I said, the first big step in the PER is to evaluate the condition of the existing system. And so I know these maps are hard to see. In fact, I have hard copies, so we can pass those around so you guys can try to look at them a little closer if you want to as we go along. But basically the system consists of a couple of water storage tanks that sit up here. And then the colored lines in here are the distribution network, the piping throughout the system. It's a fair amount of PVC, but there's also quite a bit of asbestos cement pipe and ductile iron pipe that's old. There's pipe that's over 100 years old in your system still. And then the system is served by the Rickham Well system out here, which is an infiltration gallery, combination of wells and infiltration galleries out here. And then there's also this waterworks well, which is used as kind of a backup source. And so those are the different components we looked at when we were evaluating the condition of the existing facilities. So when you look at water supply, as I said, there's the Rickham Well system. This all operates kind of as one system. So you can see on this column here is what the water that's produced from those wells, or the capacity of the pumps. So the waterworks well, again, is not used regularly, but is used as a backup. I think the city operates it once a month or something to make sure the chlorine system and the well is operating okay. And then the Rickham well is your main supply. So you can see that's about 1,600 gallons per minute. One challenge here, and I'll get into some of the deficiencies here in a minute, is that these are all believed to be kind of tied together. So if there's, something happens in that Rickham Well system, it feeds through the waterworks system, and some of that seems to be a little bit unknown exactly how that's all tied together. But so it puts this at risk of contaminating that source as well. In addition, this all feeds, the Rickham Well system feeds through the water well system up to the water storage tank. So if something happens to that water line between the wells and up at the tanks, then there's potential for a large number of users to be taken out of service while that is maintained. So we also take a look at water use, and so we look at both pumped flow data as well as metered data. Many of you, if you're connected to the public system, have a water meter on your water service line that records the amount of water you use. And then we compare those two numbers, and the difference between those two numbers is basically the amount of water being pumped into the system that never makes it through a meter. So that's being lost through leakage or some other, maybe through an unmetered use. So based on pumped flow data, your existing average day use is about 270,000 gallons per day, or 266 gallons per capita day. And metered use, so the amount actually making it through a meter and the city collects revenue on, is about 160 gallons per day, or 159 gallons per person per day. And so based on those gallons per capita per day and that population projection that I talked about at the beginning, we're able to project flows that you'll need to be able to supply to your system 20 years from now, and determine if your supply is adequate to meet those demands in the future. And so when we look at that, you get an average day demand of just over 500,000 gallons per day, 352 gallons per minute, and then a maximum demand of 1.5 million, or 1,053 gallons per minute. One reason we look at that is because the Department of Environmental Quality requires that you're able to meet your maximum day demands with your largest well taken out of service. So when I do that, when I take that Rickham well out of service, you're still able to meet your existing maximum day demands, but you don't quite get there for your projected demands. So at some point in time, you're going to have to start looking at, developing additional water capacity to serve your system. So these two lines represent the amount of water pumped into your system and the amount of water that makes it through a meter somewhere in the system. And so that's that unaccounted for water I was talking about, the difference between what you're pumping in to your system and what is actually being measured. The reason this is important is because this is water that's not making it to the customer. So it's costing the city money to treat it with chemicals, the energy costs for pumping it, but they're not actually collecting the revenue to help cover those expenses through because it's not making it through a meter. The other reason is that this can happen for a number of different things, but small pinholes can form in some of the ductile iron pipe, that provide entry points for possible contamination. So there's higher risk for contamination. Main breaks can result in negative pressures, and you can end up with backflow events, which can lead, to contamination. So that's why we look closely at this and try to make sure we try to minimize it. Water loss in a community is pretty typical, anywhere from 10-15% range. Once you start getting above that, it's really something that we recommend you start trying to address. All right, so for the distribution system, it's made primarily of asbestos cement pipe. There's a little bit of cast iron, some ductile iron, and then PVC mains, ranging in size from 2 to 12-inch diameter. As I mentioned earlier, there's portions of the system that are over 100 years old. So that's far past the design life of these types of materials. There's also gate valves, fire hydrants, water service lines, of course, all different components of your distribution system. Some of the issues we've identified, I've really already talked about. The water loss. Fire protection is another big one. So some of the water mains in the distribution system are undersized, and so you can't meet fire flow requirements in the event of a fire. And then the redundancy, and then just aging in general. Aging infrastructure is an issue facing not just Choteau, but I mean it's an issue nationwide. So this is just a screenshot of a hydraulic water model we developed, and what you can take away from this is these areas circled in red are areas where we determined that adequate fire flow is not met. And what we did was we came out in the field, worked with your Public Works Director, Mike Maples. We flowed hydrants and recorded flows and pressures, and we used that information to calibrate our computer model. And overall, it matched up very well. And then we were able to run different scenarios. So the average day use, maximum day use under a fire flow event. And so in some of these areas where there's some smaller pipe sizes and older pipe materials, we aren't quite able to provide adequate amount of fire flow while maintaining pressures throughout the system. What we like to see in residential areas is at least 1,000 gallons per minute for 2 hours. While you're maintaining adequate pressures. And so these areas circled are just some of the areas where we don't quite meet that. And then the last component we looked at is the storage tanks. So currently you have a 250,000 gallon concrete tank and a 500,000 gallon concrete tank. You can see constructed in 1912 and 1949, so they too are getting up there in age, although concrete tanks are great and do last a long time. They've served many communities very well for a long time. But as they age, there could start to be some structural issues. There's been question as to if one of yours has a leak in it or not. So the purpose of the storage tanks is basically to meet your average day demands, but also to provide that, your operational storage, but also to provide that emergency storage capacity in the event of a fire. And so you take what you want to try to get for your fire flow capacity, and add that to your average day demands, and that's how you size your storage capacity. So we looked at your average day demands plus a fire flow event in commercial business districts, schools. We aim for 2,500 gallons per minute for 2 hours. And so you take that volume of water, add it to your average day flow, and your need is about 570,000 gallons. If you do the same exercise with projected demands for the 20-year design life, the projected capacity needed in your storage tank is about 800,000 gallons. So you're really close to where you need to be for storage capacity. And overall, the condition of the tank seems to be holding up pretty good. So this, kind of fell lower in terms of priority. Oops, going the wrong way. Okay, so in summary, the deficiencies identified: the aging system, the water loss, increased potential for backflow events, and contamination in the distribution system. The fire flow availability in some of those residential areas was a concern. The supply redundancy, again, if something happens along that whole transmission main, or if some contamination gets into your wells, there could be a situation or a scenario where a lot of people could be without water until that gets addressed. Storage tanks, a little undersized when you look at the future capacity. I will say that once you get some of the water loss addressed, that average day use, that's all based on pumped flow into the system. So that could be reduced once you reduce some of that leakage. So you might be just fine on storage capacity. So based on those deficiencies, we developed some alternatives. And so basically, no action is certainly a viable alternative. You could do nothing. Nobody, the state or anybody, nobody's in here yelling at the city saying, you have to do these improvements or else. We looked at all options for developing a new water supply well to provide some of that redundancy I talked about. We looked at a few different options for distribution system improvements, and then we also costed out what an additional storage tank would cost. I'm not sure why my slideshow is showing up so narrow and long, so you can't see it very well, but for water supply improvements, we were looking at an option of developing a new well over here on this side of town. This is Airport Road. And basically the thought was to be able to connect the new well back to the system over here, as well as up to the storage tanks over here, so that if currently the transmission main, runs along Main Avenue and then goes up First Street Northeast up to the tanks. So if anything were to happen to this line, this well could continue to both fill the tanks, serve the system over here, as well as serve the system over here until that line was repaired. And so it gives the system an amount of redundancy that it doesn't currently have. And the cost of this alternative is about $2.5 million. So for distribution system improvements, it's really for distribution, it's either you kind of do something or you don't. And so the alternatives analysis is really which projects are, it's really kind of developing priorities for the improvements that need to be made at some point. So it's not looking at, in the case of treatment, there's different treatment technologies that you can weigh against each other. And distribution system improvements is a little bit different. It's either you're going to do something or you're not. So one of the options we looked at was replacing the main along Main Avenue through town. At first, this is what initially kind of drove this study, this project, because MDT does plan to come to Choteau at some point in time and redo the highway through town. And so the city was trying to be proactive and make sure that the infrastructure beneath the road is taken care of prior to that highway being replaced, so that you're not having to dig it up multiple times, and that's a burden on the community, a burden on businesses, and so they were trying to coordinate with that. As we did this, the mayor and I had a couple different meetings with MDT, and we learned that highway project is quite a few years out yet. So that caused this priority to maybe fall back on the priority list a little bit. There is some fire flow recommendations down in this area that we can improve some of those mains to improve fire flow in that area. It is an older pipe in the system, so water loss is likely an issue in here. So it's not that it's not important, it's just that it's not important just because of MDT anymore. So the cost estimate for that replacement is just under $2 million, $1,985,000. So the next thing we looked at was replacing some mains over in the 7th Avenue Southwest. This is,
by the school.
Yeah, over by the school. So this would replace about 5,000 feet of pipe. That's currently 4-inch, 6-inch asbestos cement pipe. So we would upsize that to improve fire flows in the area, as well as the hope would be to reduce the water loss in that area as well. So this project would cost $1,559,000 estimated. Another alternative we looked at, something I touched on at the very beginning, was if the city was going a direction to extend the water system to some of the private users and get them connected to the public system. This is the area, I believe, that was most susceptible to some of those flooding issues that you experienced. And so that's why we costed it out for this. This quickly fell off, to the bottom of the priority list, not because it's not important, but because it's a much bigger deal than us just saying, your well may be contaminated someday, so you have to connect to the system. It needs to be a much larger community discussion that would take time, and I know the city is interested in getting feedback from users if they're even interested in that. There's a whole process for something like that, and so we did cost it out, but it didn't gain any traction as far as prioritizing improvements in the city. The cost estimate for this particular one was $1,664,000. And then finally, we looked at this area. This is some of the oldest pipe in the system. It's ductile iron pipe, so it's likely one of the more susceptible areas to that water loss. And this was one of the areas where some fire flow improvements are necessary. So this replaces about 6,000 feet of 4-inch ductile iron pipe, and the estimated project cost is just over $1.8 million. The storage improvements, basically we looked at adding 310,000 gallon volume worth of storage capacity. We looked at three different options, I think actually. This is a glass-lined steel tank. So there's different types of tanks, and there's pros and cons to all of them. The glass-lined steel tank tend to have a very long life, very low maintenance requirements, and so it makes it, when you look at life cycle costs, it makes it a very appealing option. This would increase your capacity to meet your projected demands, improve the reliability of your storage facility by getting rid of some of that aging infrastructure. The estimated project cost is $1.1 million, and the annual O&M cost is about $9,800 for a tank like this.
Could you tell them what O&M stands for, please?
Yes, thank you. Operation and maintenance. And so for some types of tanks, you have to recoat the tank, every few years or different things like that. So a glass-lined steel tank, there's some gaskets or some different things that have to be adjusted, but the maintenance is very inexpensive. There's not much you have to do. It's, tank cleaning every few years, things like that. And then you'll see that in comparison to a couple of the other types of tanks. So this alternative looked at building in 310,000 gallon concrete tank. So basically you'd be replacing a concrete tank with a new concrete tank. And concrete, the capital costs are quite a bit more expensive often, but the annual O&M costs are a little bit less because there's just not much. Concrete is it's very reliable. There's very little in terms of operation and maintenance requirements. And so you can see here the capital costs are higher, $1,649,000, and the annual O&M operation and maintenance costs are a little bit less, estimated at about $6,800 a year. And then finally, we looked at a welded steel tank. This is this falls in between the glass-lined and the concrete tank in terms of capital costs, but the annual operation and maintenance costs are pretty high because this tank has to be recoated in the field every 10 to 20 years, and a recoating project can be quite expensive. So the estimated project cost is $1.4 million, and the annual operation and maintenance cost is over $29,000 a year. So this is a decision matrix that we use to help determine what the preferred alternative would be. We had meetings with the city, we held the Zoom public meeting, and ultimately came to this as the final, preferred alternative decision matrix. The criteria, the selection criteria across the top are basically required by the funding agencies. They ask that we look at these particular criteria, but you can weigh them, based on the specific community needs, what's important in each community. And most of the time, the cost is the main driver behind things. And so you can see that has a weight of 10, the highest weighting of 10. You can see over here, this is the total, and they're all fairly close. The thing over here with the tanks, the welded tank is the last one, and it's the lowest, and that's because of those annual operation and maintenance costs. So when you look at a 20-year life cycle cost, it drives the cost of that one way up and makes it score lower than the other options. The distribution improvements are all basically the same, just because the costs are very similar. They all, provide kind of very similar improvements. And so really that just comes down to what's most important to the community. So the draft preferred alternative that the city elected to pursue would be to develop the additional water supply. You notice on the decision matrix I didn't really have a comparison because I didn't have anything to compare to. It's either you develop a new well or you don't. We could have looked at, sometimes communities will look at developing like a surface water source, but in this area that wasn't really a feasible option. You have good groundwater here, so we didn't look at that. So the city felt that it was important to develop an additional water supply to provide redundancy in the system. For right now, not taking any action on the storage improvements, and then looking at replacing that section of town with the 4-inch ductile iron pipe that's 105 years old or so. So the total project cost for that is estimated to be $4,160,000. So $4 million is a whole lot of money, and so one of the most important aspects of this process is trying to help the city identify ways that this project can be paid for. And so there's a number of different funding agencies out there that have a combination of grants and low interest loans available to communities like Choteau. So one thing we do to determine eligibility for that funding is look at the target rate. We do a target rate analysis. So the target rate is something that's calculated based on your median household incomes, and the Department of Commerce has developed a formula, and it's a percentage of that median household income. So you have a combined water and sewer system, so they take a percentage of that median household income and determine that is what they want to see users in this community paying per month to, as they put it, pay their fair share for the use of the infrastructure and necessary improvements to the infrastructure. So your existing combined water and sewer rate, on average, it varies from user to user, but is just under $87 a month. So based on the Department of Commerce's calculation, your MHI is, the MHI is based, median household income is based on census information, but that's $38,529. So the percentage, the target rate the Department of Commerce calculates is about $73.85 a month per user. And so you're already paying more than your target rate, which makes you eligible for some of these funding sources. One of the big ones in Montana is called the Treasure State Endowment Program, which is facilitated through the Department of Commerce. You can get up to $750,000 in grant funds through that program if you're at 150% or more of your target rate, and then that amount goes down a little bit depending on what percentage you are at of your target rate. Department of Natural Resources has opportunity for a $125,000 grant. And then the State Revolving Fund is a low-interest loan program, but they do also have opportunity for loan forgiveness, which is essentially a grant, particularly on the water side. They get their funding allocated through the EPA, and the water usually has enough money to be able to forgive or grant some of those dollars, up to $500,000 or 50% of your project costs, up to $500,000. And then rural development, USDA rural development is also a low-interest loan program. They have incredibly low interest rates right now. The city has used rural development on its past sewer project, and they also have a grant component if you're eligible, if there's determined to be a public health and safety need, and if your median household income is at a certain threshold. So we looked at a few different options based on those available funding sources to determine how we could make this project as affordable as possible for the users in the community. So the first one you can see is very expensive, $20 to $22 more per month per user than you're already paying. This would include a $125,000 DNRC grant, the $625,000 Treasure State Endowment Program grant, and then a loan with $500,000 loan forgiveness from State Revolving Fund. This is based on a 20-year loan through the SRF program, and they have about a 2.5% interest rate. So in order to try to reduce those costs per user, we looked at maybe extending that loan with SRF to 30 years, which they do allow sometimes, not always, but in this case we felt that it could be justified because the new infrastructure you'd be installing would have a life 30 years and much beyond that, so we thought it could be justified. It reduced the estimated cost per user to $14 to $16 per month. Same funding package, just a longer term. That's still fairly expensive, and so we looked at using rural development. And one benefit with rural development is they have more money to use in terms of grant funds, and they also have a longer term. You can do 40 years with rural development. Currently, their interest rate, I want to say, is like for your levels like 1.275 or somewhere in that range, so it's very low. So this scenario looks at, it would result in a $12 to $14 per month per user cost. It has the DNRC and the TSEP grant. An RD loan, this assumes you wouldn't be successful in an RD grant, so this is kind of a worst case scenario. RD does require a local contribution as well, so they look at your cash reserves and do some calculations and determine what they feel the community should contribute also. So we've estimated that to be about $400,000 from your cash reserves that the city has. And so we had several conversations with rural development staff to determine what they thought was realistic and what we could assume in our funding scenarios. And so here you can see the user cost per month has dropped to somewhere between $7 and $10 because we have this $662,000 RD grant and just the $1 million loan. And they thought that was realistic because there is a public health and safety need here, and you're already paying, above your target rate. You are paying your fair share of these costs already. So. So that being said, this, obviously is the most affordable and quickly became the preferred option as far as the funding package goes. So once we had kind of identified a potential project, looked at the funding, and figured out a way to help you pay for it, we did an environmental assessment as well. So the environmental assessment was provided to the city. It's a public document. The city has access to it. If anybody wants to look at it, you can get hold of me too. I can send it to you. But basically, we're aiming to analyze the complexity and seriousness of any environmental issues that may exist. This particular project is expected to be very minimal because you're replacing pipelines in areas that have already been disturbed. We're not, taking any prime farmland out of use or, things of that nature. We sent letters to a whole, an assortment of local, state, federal agencies to give them an opportunity to comment on the project. And then, of course, we included information about this in the advertisement for this meeting as well as for the last meeting, and are here tonight if anybody has public comment regarding the environmental assessment. But we were basically able to conclude after getting all of these comments and reviewing the environmental impacts that the environmental assessment is acceptable and there's not a need to take it a step further to do an environmental impact statement. So with all of that information, what do we do next? The applications for funding were due in June 1st and June 15th for DNRC and TSEP. And so we submitted those applications, and I brought copies of those right here. The TSEP and DNRC applications actually go through the legislative process, and so that will happen in January of next year. And we usually hear of awards for those grants by May after the legislature, so we would expect to have the funding awards in May of 2021. Once that funding, there's a contracting process for that you go through, and once that funding is available, you would start design probably in July of next year. And then you have to go through the whole design process, submit design plans and specifications to the Department of Environmental Quality. Once you have all your permitting and approvals in place, you can go out to bid. It is a competitive public bidding process, so we would anticipate that happening in the winter of 2021, so that construction could follow that in spring of 2022. So it's a little bit of a process, but tends to be worth it if you're able to secure some of those grant funds. And so with that, I would open it up to questions. Yes, sir.
Could you go back to
Ed,
that page?
will you please go to the podium, please, and state your name for the record?
My name is Ed Bumgarner. Could I have you go back to page 15?
Page numbers on here, so you'll have
Right,
to just.
Go forward one. Next, another one. Right, no, another one. Yes. Is your RD loan enough there? Because the other ones were pushing 4 million, this isn't anywhere near that.
I could have a typo in there. Let me open up the PER and double check.
I just wanted to make sure we were right.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, I want to make sure too.
I'm glad you're looking there. I wouldn't want to find it.
I'm going to flip right to it. Yeah, so in here we have, you're right, thank you for the correction. So the RD loan is actually the 2.3 million, so we have that right in the application and it just didn't translate to the slideshow. The user rates that we have up there are projected correctly.
Okay.
So
the RD
that's
needs to be bumped.
that's the important part.
The math just wasn't making sense.
Yes, thank you. I'm glad you're paying attention. Any other questions that I can answer or help anybody understand about the process or the project? Yes, sir.
Hello?
You can turn it on if you want.
My name is Nate White. I had a question about the meters. What type of meters would be used, and if indeed someone had some sort of electromagnetic sensitivity, would there be an option for the smart meter?
Sure. So, for one, this project doesn't actually include any meters. The city already has meters installed on existing users, and this project doesn't actually replace any of those. So we didn't analyze water meters for the project.
Okay.
Now-
You mentioned meters, but that would, okay, so I understand. Oh,
Yeah.
now, pardon me.
No, that's okay. I was going to say, because you asked a similar question last time, and I'm not a medical person. I don't know the sensitivity on the radio frequency radiation to, I know there's concern over cancer causing things, and I'm not, in a position to speak to that. But I do know that I've learned actually that several of the types of meters that we often specify have done studies that show that the radio frequency radiation is much less than a cell phone, much less than a microwave in your house. So it's very, very low. And I read an article by the American Cancer Society that said they, determined there's pretty little risk that it increases the chances of cancer. I don't know that that's, what you're after, but
yeah, I don't know. I think I've probably seen
So
some
the-
other sources. I mean,
So my only point is that the meter companies, they have to meet FCC regulations in terms of that. And so all the meters in my experience that I've specified in that communities across Montana do meet those
So
regulations.
would those be industry-funded studies that we're referring to?
I don't know for sure. There was a community that did one study. There was, some meter companies, various meter companies that have done studies. I mean, obviously the American
it's
Cancer
industry-funded. The American Cancer Society, okay. And then my other question would be, I'm actually kind of shocked at the projection for growth, for 2040. This is really interesting to me. It's 1,900 people. And I really appreciate actually that visioning into the future. And I'm wondering how far that visioning goes and where that data, the source data for that visioning, what created that vision? What created that projection, rather, that there would be 1,900 people in 2040?
Well, the biggest thing that went into that is being the service population is we estimated there's about 280 homes, I think, and we equated that to a person per home that are on private wells. And so if all of those people connected, that's like another 700 people or something. If I did my math right, I'd have to look back to look at the exact numbers. So that's a big part of it. But then we added that 0.5% annual growth on top of that. I don't know, sometimes, there's a chance that happens. We look at historical population data. There's been, a little bit of growth here in Choteau over the years. I don't have a crystal ball. The city doesn't have a crystal ball. But I think our goal there is just to make sure that any infrastructure you put in the ground is going to serve the needs of the community for the long term. And you're not going to have to be back in 5 years or 10 years replacing the pipe that you just spent $4 million on today.
As far as our goals, are we, or imagining that 2040, is that 2040 Montana, or is that a FEMA zone? And if it is first and foremost a FEMA zone, which FEMA zone would that be?
It was just a projected population for the city of Choteau.
Okay. I'm just curious what's driving those. I'm wondering if there's also a map that would. I'd be interested to know how that actually links up to the projections for the wildlands that humans won't be allowed access to. I'm not saying diabolical.
Nate, that has nothing to do with this.
Okay.
Please.
Okay. One other question. The material for the delivery lines, could you speak to that? Are there options, or is that pretty much?
There's a couple different options. Typically, most communities are using PVC pipe, plastic pipe.
Is there a different type of PVC pipe? Or?
There's different pressure ratings. There's different options. There's also HDPE pipe, different kind of plastics. So I'd have to look up the specifications
not much to
from
consider
each.
There.
But
it doesn't sound like there's much to consider.
it's very standardized.
I see. Okay. I think that's it. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Any other comments from the crowd tonight? Mr. Salmon.
Russ and living down here. I don't know if this would be a question for you or maybe the city director or whatever. I guess maybe I haven't paid attention enough to this. But when you look at these different areas, different ages of pipes, stuff like that, can you tell where the majority of your losses? Do you have sections, or is it a whole big blanket?
To be honest with you, we're losing 70% of the water we pump.
But you can't isolate it.
No, to be honest with you, when we were sitting here at our last meeting, you guys, there was water pumping out of a line underneath this building. We had a broken water line underneath here. We're finding broken service lines, cracked service lines in people's yards where they're standing in their yards and you can jump up and down because the water's leaking. It'd be nice if we could, Ross, but we're chasing leaks as fast as we can with tools and that.
I guess a comment is, I'm glad to see you guys starting in on some of this stuff. I realize it could be overwhelming, but you got to start somewhere. So.
Could be.
It could really be overwhelming.
Yes. Thank you, Ross. Anyone else? If not, I would like to take a 10-minute break so Colette can get her stuff taken care of and get her on the road back to Helena, and then we'll reconvene at, say, 25 after. Okay? All right. That's your apprentice, Colette?
What's that?
One of your apprentices?
Yeah, that's one of them. He's not that little anymore.
Didn't mean to call you nothing.
No, that's quite all right. Hey, I'm human. I have typos sometimes too. I'm just glad I had it right in the report, so the math is right when I.
It's just that one RD loan was a 1.3.
Yeah, it should be 2.3, somewhere in that range. The user rates are calculated based on
Right,
that $2 million loan. So.
Either way, it's $4.16 million.
Yeah, it's a lot of millions.
But the rest is just going to write a check.
That's what I heard.
You see the manual that I have for doing live at leadership for scouts. It's 900 pages.
I'm going to have to only bring a handcart to take this back to City Hall.
You brought your pickup.
I brought my pickup.
It's the last I read, it's about 25% contained. We've had a lot of rain the last couple of days, so I think that was good. The smoke hasn't been too terrible, and they lifted the evacuations. Yeah, so
Precept, and this is to the
power
others.
lines. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I know, it happened so fast. I was at the softball fields watching my niece play softball, and all of a sudden you just saw the big smoke. I was like, oh wow, doesn't look good.
There's some big ones in Arizona.
Really? Yeah.
You would think there's some fires now.
It's early.
It must be old dead grass.
Take your,
I think so. I don't have to leave with those big binders.
I gotta leave with those big binders. There goes our timer.
Just fine.
Makes you feel awful sitting here in your skin. What'd you expect?
July 8th. 4 days after the 4th.
I'll be in town.
It was 52 degrees when I got over here this afternoon, and I turned the heat up to 64, and that's
A
what
lot
it's
of people
actually
show up to see my mom.
We shut it off
here this year.
Oh, we're just here to
See your mom. Thanks a lot.
So I was at open gym volleyball last night.
Rest stop is open. Period. Closed and lost.
So it's you driving. TikTok guy running around with Lysol, spraying the arms before the ball. Yeah. I help. I didn't volunteer.
I play volleyball.
I'm shocked by that.
Where'd you go to college?
Montana Tech.
She's an ore digger.
I'm an Oregon.
What years did you?
2000. I graduated in 2006, but I played 2001 to 2004.
So, you remember Evelyn Smith from U of M? 6'9", middle hair.
The name, I'm from Missoula. The name's not.
She wasn't from Missoula, she was from Oregon.
Okay.
And I might be wrong the last name, but so I used to hang out with their volleyball team.
Oh.
And yeah, 6'9".
Like crap. 39.
No, she didn't.
They do that?
Right? Because you're what, 5'10"?
Yeah, if I love it.
Yeah.
The judges.
See, my dad started coaching. 7 or 8.
Yeah.
I've been on volleyball forever.
Yeah, when I graduated.
A lady at the disability course says that I said that I go to car shows once a week
And I coached up there when I
the
was
whole year.
So I coached there for 4 years.
Cool.
For 5 years, and then I.
If I could do that, I'd
Big Sky? Well, you know, there's no
ability to work.
Wait, graduated. Yeah. What year did you graduate?
Well, that wasn't
My wife would have been your freshman year. Vandale was her main help. But she got cut.
technicians. But she threw that all out. She's gonna take automatic and car.
You know, she's a good passer though, and she's quick. You need help out with it?
No.
Were you good, Colette?
Systems.
All right.
All right, thank you guys.
Thank you, Colette.
Yep.
There's your,
Deny request.
gotta have a backup plan. Yep, gotta have a plan B.
All right, thank you guys. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank
Yep,
you.
thank you guys.
Anybody want to read the night?
Please, have any code book.
No kidding.
By the way, did you bring that?
It's on the truck. I got it up here. It's easier for me to find them online. It's sad. We'll bring the meeting back to order.
5 minutes early.
I know we're 5 minutes early, but
It's okay. Get out of here.
it's 5 minutes quicker, we can get out of
I
here.
think everybody's back anyways.
Yes, I believe they are. Thanks to Colette for coming up for that tonight. We'll move on to our next agenda, and that would be the item, and that would be the approval of the minutes from the city council meeting of June 2nd.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion to accept by Councilman Doyakos and a motion, second from Councilman Merja. Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the minutes will be approved as presented. Who's leaving the state, or who wants to be out of state?
Wants to?
Does Wyoming count?
Wyoming counts.
For me then.
Okay, will you miss a meeting?
Yeah, well, no, not a meeting, but
Okay.
I'll just be out of state. I'll look at the calendar here, so I have the right dates for you. Be the 26th through the 30th
Of
June.
back on the 30th? Okay. Unfinished business.
I move you
Oh.
let him go.
I move that we allow Steve to leave the state.
I gotta make a call on that. I have a motion from Councilman Major to allow Councilman Gee to leave the state, and a second from Councilman Merja.
Merja.
All in favor?
Aye.
Major, Merja.
I'll just change my last name.
Anybody opposed? Have fun in Wyoming.
Yeah, we'll see.
Unfinished business on an urban decay committee, council member Mark Major. So, we will, with the direction of you guys, I will reach out and place an ad asking for citizens from Choteau who want to be involved in committees. And first two committees that'll be out the door will be the Community Garden Committee and the Urban Decay Committee. And I will reach out, we'll find a night that we can do it. I will bring Dan Clark from the local government business center up to sit down with the folks, run through what the committee's expectations and goals and
Legal requirements.
what the legal requirements will be for those committees. And then we'll see how many are left standing when we're done, and then we'll pick out our committee people and get going, okay? I will come back and address this in my report as to what we've been doing here recently on that. Is there any issues or concerns with that process?
Do we need a motion to form the committee, or is that just just to appoint the members later on?
The
We don't
way,
have any volunteers yet.
true.
That's not true, I volunteered.
Well, you make contact.
Takes more than one.
I think we need a motion to make a committee, to form the committees, regardless of whether there's people.
I
that
would
are
stand
gonna-
for a motion to create
We-
committees.
We just have discussion on the agenda.
I was my understanding that through the executive branch, the committee, the appointing of the people of the committees was my position.
Okay, that's true.
I think you make recommendations and we
We-
say yea
yeah.
or nay.
But I guess there's a question, can we make a motion would that be in order to make a motion to form the committee?
Can we make a motion on
On an action item?
unfinished, well,
I don't
yeah.
believe we can.
So I would say we can make the motion at the next meeting and have it on the,
Okay.
In the meantime, if between now and then, if I decide to get people together,
Yep.
there would be no heartburn with that.
I don't have a problem with it.
Okay.
and can I say something about that? I struggled with this because I want to see our community taken care of, but I don't want to be like you got crap police. Does that make sense? I don't want to, like you got junk and I'm here knocking on your door finding you kind of thing.
It makes sense.
I want it to be a positive thing because I think there's a real case for saying my next door neighbor either increases or decreases the value of my house. My neighbor across the street either increases or decreases or has marginal effect. But if I'm the neighbor that decreases the home values around me, I don't want someone sending me a letter saying, hey, if you don't do this in 30 days, we're going to fine you. I want someone knocking on my door saying, hey, I'm here to help. I want to make it better. I'm sure you want to make it better. There's going to be people that are like, I don't want to make it better. But I feel like we've kind of got to do something, and according to, from conversations with Dan Clark or MMIA or some of the ones I've had, we can come up with some guidelines that say, for instance, if you have, cars that are unregistered, undrivable, unfixed, a stipulation like that, there's something that's got to be able to be done that way, without permitting and that type of stuff. So that was the only point I wanted to make is I don't want to be I'm here to find you kind of person. I want to be here like, hey, I want to work, I want to improve our community kind of. That's the committee I sort of envision putting together. So.
Thank you for that direction. And that's how I would see it as well. Eventually, the committee we would have, a committee in my mind would have a council member and as the chair
Community
and the community members. And the community members would be the voting members. The chair would be there as a non-voting member, or the council member would be there as a non-voting member to direct them through the city issues. So, okay. I'll reach out to Melody and figure out a date where I can get everybody together, and we will hold that meeting here. We're going to continue to use this facility as long as we can with social distancing, and we can spread out better, okay? New business.
Is there any public comment on that?
There was no decision.
There was no decision made,
Okay.
so.
Yeah, I'm really unclear. I don't need to go on any further, but
We'll clear it all up when we have our committee meetings, as to what the standards, what we would like to see done, and then,
May I just ask one question?
Yes.
When you actually, Chris, when you mentioned, well, if I start meeting with some people right now, would that be all right with everyone? What people are you referring to?
People who are interested in being on.
and being on the committee,
Not necessarily people who are going to be appointed, but people who may have.
who may want to be,
Yeah. So if you
Okay.
have interest, let Chris know, and he'll talk to you.
yeah. And if there's others out there of like mind,
And my other question was, would it be appropriate to actually put together the plan before there's any decision-making?
how could you make a plan when there's no one there to make a plan?
No, I'd say that's the process that Dan will walk us through.
Yeah, that's what, I want the local government guy to come in and talk to us.
He's gonna help us to come to what's gonna be the consensus.
Yes.
Not necessarily give us the information, but help us as a group figure out what the consensus is.
Well,
The
and to
consensus
help
of
us
The
understand.
consensus of a select group.
Of that
committee.
The committee.
Of a committee.
Of a committee.
It's tasked with
But
certain
also to let
things.
us know what we can and cannot do.
Well, and I think the point of formulating the committee, I don't even know what the goals of the committee are. And I can't
This
tell you
time
what the
I
goals
don't
of the
either.
committee are until we
Have a committee.
until we get to that point. So there's some preliminary conversations that need to happen, maybe between Chris and I, or Stephen, whoever, and Dan Clark, before we can even get to even answer your question. Does that make sense? I'm giving you an unclear answer because I don't know. But there's gonna be some conversations that need to happen before we get to the point where we even have the committee.
Or we have a plan.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm hearing very clearly that the objective is to address properties that are bringing down the price of other properties.
Well, and I think that's something I'm considering.
And I realize there's.
But let me
a lot-
speak specifically to your question, to your point there,
Mhm.
is I think there's properties in Choteau that aren't meeting a certain standard. Now, that might be my standard, but I think the point of the committee is to figure out what is our community standard?
From a consensus. Because his standard, your standard, Phil's standard, Ed's standard, Rich's standard, my standard might be different. So we have to get together as a committee and come up with a compromise consensus that we all agree on.
But I think it's fair to say that there are properties in Choteau we could all say, and it might be different for us, we could say, I kind of wish that got cleaned up. And there's even things on my property, I'm like, I need to clean that up.
Well,
And
more
it's
so
sort of
than
good neighbor
consensus,
policy.
I guess it would be, I mean, I'm not saying that the consensus isn't part of it, but there's also ordinances.
And that's what we're
that-
gonna look at with
that
Dan Clark.
considerations would be based on, I would imagine.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks a lot, I appreciate that clarification.
So, okay? Anything else? All right. New business. Vote on the capital board appointment for Mary Sexton. Mary, did you bring a speech no less than 3,000 words for us?
2 minutes?
And you're not doing this under duress. Okay.
The podium is yours, Mary.
I'll make it quick. Public servants are often unthanked, and I really want to thank you very much for all your time and effort, and I will make this quick. Appreciate the Port Authority. It's been, I think, pretty active over the last 3 years. This is our 3rd year anniversary, and I know actually my appointment's up now for another 5-year term, which is, at my age, that's a long time. But anyway, I appreciate your support of the Port Authority. I'm just going to go through a few things that we're working on right now. Because some of you may know about them, some of you may not, and I have a little handout at the end that if you have good bifocals you can read because there's so much information on it. But at our last meeting we talked about some updates from the city of Choteau, and interestingly enough, the sewer project, the water project you talked about was kind of from discussions with CAP on what to do about Main Street if and when the highway comes through. I know those plans have changed somewhat, but who knows, maybe we'll get a big infrastructure bill nationally and a lot of money will come down. Who knows? But anyway, that is one of the things that was initiated with some of our efforts with CAPA. We also been working a lot recently with GFDA and Sweetgrass Development and Department of Commerce on assistance and grants and that kind of thing, getting people information about PPP and EIDL loans and grants. We've been working with them. More directly, we've been working on things that we've worked on for a number of years, marketing and branding for tourism development. We have a grant we're working on through the Choteau Acantha and others, and to look at advertising, and we've been in a partnership not only with the Port Authority, but the Chamber, as well as the T-bid, to get funding for doing more advertising for promoting Choteau. I think you'll see some of those ads in the fall and next spring. This was not the best time to put out those ads. And we're working an agreement today, actually, on our website, the Visit Choteau website, which was kind of grew out of some efforts through the Port Authority and T-bid and Chamber. And the three of us are going to partner together to maintain that website, keep it up, pay for it, and continue to have it updated and information put on it. Thanks to Tom and Steve, Tom Frauenfelder and Steve, who do an awful lot of that work. So we're working in that. We also finished a USDA Rural Development Grant to do an interactive trails map and some signs. Signs are one thing, and if any of you notice coming out of Great Falls, the sign for Glacier Park, do any of you see that? That was the Port Authority.
Thank you.
We did that.
Is that the one on I-15?
Yes.
Yep.
Well, we've got two. We've got one down by Wolf Creek
Wolf
and
Creek,
one coming out of Great Falls. But we're also looking at signs that you can put on the Teton Canyon Road, Bellevue Road, and have interactive trail maps, because often people come to town and what do? Yeah, there's Forest Service maps, but there is not a good source of information, and everybody's digital now. A lot of folks are using digital maps. Yes?
I have some ideas on that one. I actually
Okay.
had a conversation with Steve on Saturday, so we should talk.
Well, we haven't gotten that grant yet, but we're very hopeful. So
Okay.
let's talk.
This might even be something that could be done without.
Okay, so, cool,
Yeah,
let's
so
talk.
let's talk.
So we're working in that now. Another one, we finished up a great video. If you ever looked at it, the kind of Move to Choteau video. Did you see it?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and there are melodies in it. Zach Bechtold, who else is
Blair.
Blair's in it. And it's kind of a
Yeah,
feel-good
Jesse.
thing
Yep.
that, we're hoping to utilize to recruit more folks to not only visit Choteau, but move to Choteau. And again, we're going to be working with the Chamber and T-bid on that as well, with new resident outreach. We had talked about also, we had events canceled. We got several events grants for the Yogo Festival, the Rural Wild Things. We've had 2 festivals, but this year we had to cancel both of them. But fortunately, they got some money from Department of Commerce, so they can use that money next year. So that's a good thing. We're working in childcare, one of the most pressing needs in the community. Blair Patton's the chair of that committee. We're looking at several buildings. We're looking at actually a community childcare entity that is supported. We're not sure how we're going to do that, but a standalone business is tough there, so it needs to have community support. And we're looking at ways to find a building and find community support. So I think that's going to be more reinvigorated as we have the ability to meet again and do that kind of thing somewhat. But we've done a lot of Zoom meetings. All of our meetings have been in Zoom. We also did a flyer, an outreach flyer to survey, folks that be interested in childcare, and it is a very pressing need. The last thing we talked about at the last meeting was work and meat processing. That seems to be a pretty pressing issue right now. There's a nice grant out there that's kind of a gimme grant from the governor, $150,000. We've had 3 people in Choteau. Some existing businesses, others want to look at businesses that are interested in that grant. Timetable's short. I'm hoping some of them step up and we can help them write those grants. But I think that will be an ongoing discussion on how we can do it above and beyond just this grant, because we're really primed for doing something like that.
Well, I think it's not just a specific meat, it's food security in our
Yes,
community.
yeah, it is, yeah,
But-
for security.
Barry, could I ask a question?
Yes.
I don't know your protocols. Sure.
Yes.
When you talk about meat processing, you're talking about an actual packing type plant?
Hopefully state certified for retail distribution.
Okay.
We have butchers, we have meat cutters, and they are inspected, but they're not state certified for retail.
Okay.
And that's what's really missing.
So you're thinking of the little businesses then?
Well, little to medium size, not USDA, but more. I know one over in Kalispell. I think there's one down in Livingston.
You too.
That could then market in the state. They could sell to restaurants, they could sell publicly, that kind of thing. But they can't sell out of state.
Well, Great Falls is throwing a big stink about the freezing thing.
Yeah.
And I've often wondered, what, boy, I tell you what, that'd be a nice big kick in shoulders, but if we could bring something like that.
They're looking at USDA inspection, I think, for that one, and that's a much tougher standard to meet than the state. And
Well, and
that's a bigger operation.
I'll speak to the freezing. They don't want to come here, and they told me as much.
Well, then that's, okay.
Yeah. They want a large community with a large employment base. They don't want to do anything less than what they've proposed.
Well, they might end up knocking on your door, because I don't think Great
I-
Falls is gonna let them.
I really hope they do, because I've kicked them several emails about, even just a couple hundred people rather than a couple thousand. And I've been told repeatedly that's not what we're looking at. But it's on their radar.
Okay, good to know.
Well, that's just kind of a brief rundown of it, and we did do the META assessment 2 years ago. They came back in April and we did a Zoom. It was a lot of fun. It was called Ripple Effects, and people went into chat rooms individually, or I should say breakout rooms, and it worked real well. We had about 15 people participating that have been involved in this, and they came up with a map. This is the one that we hope to blow up so that we can put it in the library or someplace, maybe in the city offices. But it does show that you do one thing, like with the ski area, then we have Friends of the Teton as a ripple effect. Or we talk about water systems for the highway rebuild, and suddenly you're doing a whole new project based on your water system needing to be upgraded. Or tourism. You do one thing to talk about marketing and branding, and suddenly you've got the T-Bid and the chamber and others that are involved in it. So a lot of folks, it ripples out in the community, and I think it continues to. And for me, and I think for the board members, this has been rewarding. We don't have a lot of money. We are not, Pend Oreille County has like almost $1 million. We have $10,000. And we appreciate the city's support. We've got grant money and we continue to put that into this. And so we'll continue to write grants, smaller ones here and there. But we do pretty much everything ourselves, and we sure appreciate Tom helping us. And I think we all pitch in and do our part. And so thank you for your support. And I'll hand this
I would take a
on.
motion to approve.
I would so move to appoint Mary Sexton to a 5-year term to the Port Authority.
I have a motion from Steve D. and a second from Councilman Merja.
They're still second even after we finish.
Anybody, any further discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Nope. Welcome back for 5 years, Mary.
Thank you, guys.
Discussion on the park bathrooms for the 4th of July weekend.
Is there any public comment on that,
On what?
that vote?
I asked for public comment, Nate.
You said any more discussion? I thought that was a.
The motion was already moved and seconded, and asked for comment before we passed the motion.
I
So,
didn't catch that one.
so we're moving on to the discussion on the park bathrooms for the 4th of July weekend. We've been getting some phone calls and some questions about it. Wanting to know if we could open the bathrooms for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Based on current guidelines of having to be cleaned no less than every 2 hours, the labor costs for us, because Friday is a holiday, since Saturday is the true holiday, there's overtime and a half issues. For us to or to open them up, you're just under $2,000 in labor, and it'd be an unknown cost in toilet paper and other cleaning issues.
And the
So,
2,000 is for the weekend.
for the 3 days.
Would that be 2,000 above what we would normally pay for the 4th of July weekend?
Yeah, well, what do you mean?
I'm assuming normally on a normal 4th of July, like 2 years ago, someone was sort of checking the
No,
toilet paper.
that would be an incorrect assumption.
Okay, so no one was doing anything on the 4th of July normally?
Not normally the day
COVID's
after.
making them do it every half hour.
Well, and I understand that, but what I'm saying is $2,000 above and beyond what we would normally spend, or is that,
Yes.
okay, that was my question.
Normally there is someone on call on the weekends who checks things, does a little bit of cleaning. But this is going to be above and beyond.
Okay.
So, without a rodeo, I don't know what they're doing with Art in the Park yet. I didn't hear last night what the
Sounds like they'll have a mixture on the
the
3rd.
ruling was for that. They are gonna have a mixer on the 3rd down here, but the Legion has a significant number. Oh,
The summer festival for the Seroptimus has yet to go before the Board of Health. They didn't submit their plan until Monday,
Okay,
and it didn't get on the agenda.
okay. I'd heard that it had been submitted, but there had been no review done yet, so. And I know in their plan that they had put in there for one porta potty. But I guess we would have to decide if we want to do that or if we're good leaving it the way it is.
My question on the porta potties is, what are the rules on them?
That would be up to those who rent them. That doesn't fall back to our purview. That's part of the plan that's submitted to the health board for approval.
So if we rented porta potties, whoever we rent them from will clean them, or that would be on us?
That-
No, it'd be on us
Okay.
still.
And so is that every 20 minutes, 24 hours a day, or is that 20 minutes while they're unlocked, or?
We would figure we would unlock them at 6 o'clock in the morning and they would go until midnight.
That's what the 2,000 is based on.
Yep,
For basically 3 days at 18 hours a day.
yep. And that doesn't include toilet paper, hand sanitizer, and other things. Now, last summer when this visitor center was open, granted it was staffed by volunteers, but the city pays for the supplies for that bathroom. That bathroom from Labor Day, Memorial Day to Labor Day, was $4,000 in paper products. Toilet paper, hand towels, and that.
Just for the 3 months?
That was before there was a shortage.
So,
And
Mr. Mayor, do you have
that
a,
was once a day, not every
yeah,
Yeah.
2
not
hours.
every 20 minutes.
Correct.
Do you have a recommendation?
My recommendation is we don't open them. I
So
mean,
I've heard the rumor that the outhouses out at the lakes and stuff are just posted, open, use at your own risk, we're not maintaining them. How are they getting away with that, if that's true? I haven't been to one.
Some are, some aren't. My guess is it's plausible deniability. They're just letting them, hey, we're here, you can use them at your own risk. I don't think we want to be that kind of a community. But I can tell you, in some travels recently, that I was stunned to find that fast food restaurants don't have their restrooms open to the public right now. You can come in and eat and sit, but you can't go to the bathroom.
Pardon me, I know I'm kind of speaking out of turn probably, and if you tell me to shut up, I will, but my mind is freaking blown. I don't know if you said public comment last time, that's not what I want to talk about. I really would have liked to make a public comment. I'll catch this one later, some of my thoughts tie into the Port Authority, but I mean, this ties right into it directly. And I'm not criticizing anyone, but I'm just like, how are we applying for grants for freaking signs? And we can't figure out a way. to
We're
clean a
not
couple
applying for
toilets.
grants. We're not.
We get a grant for a visitor center, but we don't know how to clean the toilets now. And I'm not putting I'm just like, wow, I can't believe we're in this position,
But yet, here we are.
and there's gotta be a way to actually address that right now and get a couple toilets for people to use.
We have the 2 toilets right over here.
Those ones are fired up.
They're ready to go, but they're closed off. The water shut on,
Well, no, I know they're closed up, anyway.
But that, to maintain those for 3 days, Nate, is $1,985, or $1,965.37 in labor. Before you add in any type of hand sanitizer that has to be readily available.
For 3 days, it's
For 3 days.
$1,900.
Yeah.
Yes.
And every 20 minutes, someone has to go in there and
No,
clean
that,
every
this is
cell.
based on a 2 hour, every 2 hours.
So $1,900 for 3 days.
Yes,
Yeah.
because they're holiday hours and they're weekend hours. They're not standard hours.
I'll do it for 500 every 3 days.
It's outside the realm of that's outside the scope of our ability, and you know that.
If you were to be a contractor like that, Nate, you can have liability insurance, you can have all that.
No, I'll do
Still
it
do
for
it
the
for
city.
500?
Just pay, as a city employee, I'll do it for $500.
Can't do it.
Mr. Mayor, will we have a meeting before this?
We will have a meeting on
20,
the 30th of June.
30th.
I was going to spring that on you all later, but we are tentatively set to meet again on June 30th in lieu of July 7th, so that we could take care of any last-minute issues prior to the fiscal year change and any potential changes in statuses in the phases of the reopening Big Sky. So it'll be 2 weeks from tonight.
So is where you're going with this, what if we're in phase 3 by then?
Well, I was gonna say let's table it till then.
Yeah, because
And if someone wants to come forward with a better proposal, we got 2 weeks. I'll make that a motion. to
I have a
table it.
motion to table the
I'll
discussion.
second that.
Okay.
I'll consider doing it for 400.
Major is
Next week
my
you'll be down
motion.
to-
Major is the motion.
Merger is the second.
Major malfunction.
Any further discussion on this, public or otherwise? This has been tabled. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Reports, Public Works Director, Mike's report was pretty much the cost. He did the paperwork and the cost for the bathrooms. He will have his reports for us at our month-end meeting. Same with Jody. We're in the process of beginning our budgeting process for next year. And she'll have reports for us on the July 30th one as well. Council members, start with Mr. Dean. Steve D, what do you got for us?
I know the senior center is seeking help to manage their Celarama. So if anyone out in the public is willing to spend some volunteer hours, if you know some high schoolers who need some service hours to complete, they're looking for some help. Beyond that, that's all I've got right now.
Councilman Murjot.
I got a couple of things. First of all, Mary reminded me of Sweetgrass Development. They have created first of all, they have a Facebook page. So if you don't know what Sweetgrass is, go check them out. But they've also created a Facebook page called Foot to Freezer. And what it is trying to connect people who want to buy even on the hoof livestock for slaughter with the people who have the livestock. The question was asked if fruits, vegetables, other consumables would be added later, and Sarah's response, Sarah Converse manages
The
director for Sweetgrass Development, said she'd look into it, but right now it's pretty much just livestock. If you haven't checked it out or you're curious about it, I would encourage you to go do that. She's trying to be proactive and figure out how to support our small communities as best she can. The other thing we've kicked this can down the road over and over again. I was in Lincoln the other day. They have a brand new skate park. And I've twice had young men come to me and talk to me about skate parks. And I said, okay, let's put together a proposal and come before the council. They haven't done it, so I'm doing it. We always talk about in our council meetings and on the street, we need stuff for young people to do. I think we ought to look at one. We can get one basically free upfront cost. There's an organization / person out there who likes to donate to small communities for skate parks so that kids have something to do. I would like to, put that forward for something to think about.
Okay.
And that's what I have.
Councilman Howard.
Nothing.
Councilman Major.
The only thing I wanted to remind everyone is that the 4-H fair is moving forward with a sort of a modified schedule, and so it's going to be June 25th through the 27th with the sale on the 27th, and you can register with Jerry Collins. Is going to do the kids each send in some pictures, and then it's going to be the stage stop, I believe 7 o'clock on the 27th. So we'd like to invite, I would like to invite everyone for that. Yes, Stuart?
Now, I was also told you can Zoom in or go to a meeting or something in and bid online.
Yeah, and I think there'll be details. You can contact the extension office, or I think on the MSU Teton County Extension Facebook page they'll have some details. I just wanted to remind everyone, with everything that's going on, it's pretty highly modified, and so there will be a show, but I think it's just going to be judge and kid and animals kind of thing. But I think that will be broadcast. The static stuff, I know they're modifying that, and then the sale is basically going to be a video sale at the stage stop. So, anyway, just wanted to invite the public out to it.
Okay.
Cool.
I think that's the only thing I have.
If you're interested in, Jane Woolery put out a really good packet to people that have donated and done stuff before. It gives you all the ins and outs of what you can or can't do.
Perfect. Thanks, Ross.
Great.
I'll reach out to Jane and see if I can get that on our city Facebook page.
That'd be great.
as well.
Thank you.
From the mayor's office. 6 months in, and I gotta tell you, there are days. Last week was a tough day, and if you walk into City Hall, you're gonna see some down-beaten employees, people that have been walked on. And It's odd to have citizens and members of our community come in and start swearing at you and using language that you would not believe is being used in a public facility, and getting beat up for trying to get people to do things right. And I'm asking you guys as a city council, sooner or later, we as a city are going to have to decide where we draw a line in the sand and say from this point forward, it's got to be done by the rules. Because there's so many things out there right now that are not being done by the rules, or being done on the weekends when they don't think anybody's around to see the rules. Sunday found me writing a cease and desist letter and hand delivering it to a person who was trying to raise a garage with a front end loader. And you hand them the paper and it's like, huh, I'm doing something wrong. We as a city need to decide as far as our permitting processes goes. We need a better permitting process, and it's one we're gonna reach out to some other communities in our same size and ask what they're doing, because our permit says there's two lines of what you're doing. I'm going to build a shop, and they run out of space. And when they give, okay, we're issuing a permit for the shop, but when you go look at it, the shop is actually a shop to manufacture dynamite. Well, there wasn't enough space on here, so, you know, I gave you the pertinent information.
It's about that long.
It is, it's that long.
That's your permit for building.
And
But you have to supply clear plans, don't you? That's my understanding. That's a requirement, is to provide clear plans.
Sometimes.
depends upon if it's a fence permit, if it's a shop permit, if it's a garage permit.
It's a clear plan for each one, is my knowledge of it, my experience.
When we go back and tell them that, it's like, well, that guy did it that way, so that's the way I'm gonna do it. And if you wanna stop me, go to court. So that's what I'm saying. Sooner or later, you guys, we are, and I shouldn't say we, Tom, Jody, Mike, myself, and Tracy, who's ever in the office, are getting steamrolled. Literally steamrolled by people. Because this guy or this gal or this business or that business is doing it, why can't I do it that way? So I'm asking for you guys to sit down and come together with a consensus and say, July 1st, maybe that's what we've got to do. As we talk about the urban decay, I had a conversation with John Buck. And John subsequently had talked to his kids about the stuff over here next to Buck's Sporting Goods. That stuff where all that land is sitting, scrap metal is sitting, is city property. It should not be there. I wrote letters on Sunday, and believe it or not, they didn't get out in the mail till today, because we've been that busy, to John thanking him for taking the time. And to Kyle, to Taylor, and to Clint Buck, thanking them. And offering this help from the city to say, if you need help get this out of there, we will come help you. We want this cleaned up by July 1st. We sent letters to Roy Deschner to follow up on a phone call for Deschner's. I was out with Austin Moyer today driving around town picking up vehicles that are broke down, unlicensed, unrunnable, that need to be moved. We have business permits for people working in home occupations that the first line on the permit excludes that home occupation, but yet they're doing it, and it was signed off without a variance. And it's difficult for us at the city to tell somebody, no, you can't do that, when 2018 this permit's signed to do it. And it's frustrating as all get out. So if you come into City Hall to pay a bill, tread lightly. The mood there right now is a little down because we're getting beat up. So we will do our best, and we will work with the other communities around us, and sooner or later we will have for consideration a new permitting system. I don't know what else to tell you.
Which communities are you looking to?
Similar class-size communities. We're not going to anybody bigger than us or anybody smaller than us. They will be MMIA members that are the same class size as us. A Conrad, a Cutbank, Glasgow, a Superior. We're not going to Great Falls, Helena, Billings. We're not going to power doesn't.
All of this makes me, comes to mind, like, I want to hear the city council members' vision of the city of Choteau, which I remember actually.
As
think
do
it
I.
was, you were the first person to bring that up. Or
And
that
I
was
will
one
state
thing
my
that you
vision,
brought up.
yes,
As soon
clearly
as you
again.
sat down as
Yeah.
mayor, you brought that up, and I spoke with Steve D about that a little bit and had a really good conversation with him. And I mean, we were talking about the Constitution and everything. I mean, you said you didn't like all of the Constitution, if I remember correctly, but, you know, I'd like to talk about that. I'd like to talk about it all. And I mean, I think that I really appreciate, thank you so much for actually, you know, bringing that up. I really commend you for doing so. That's pretty awesome. I really like the fact that you, like, we're going to talk about this.
So no, as we get moving forward, we'll have further discussions about that. My other point for you guys is, I would like to have a meeting on the 30th, which would be 2 weeks from tonight. Other than that, I really don't have a whole lot on our plate. The people that are out collecting signatures for legalized marijuana, we had a conversation with them yesterday. We told them they should not be in the state highway right away because they're conducting political business. We also told them that, you know, you can't have political signs within the highway right away, but until the highway department shows them the paperwork, they're going to stay where they're at. We do not have an ordinance that specifically addresses that, but we have an ordinance that needs to be tweaked to address that. And it's not that we don't want them here, and I told them, and I told the director, it's not that we're not sympathetic with the cause, we just want you to do it by the books.
Right way.
The right way. And they were not good people to talk to. Not good people to talk to. And we're getting a lot of that lately, so.
Each one of them was somewhat.
These guys were, the people here were fine, the director in Great
Oh.
Falls, so. That being said, I would open up to public comment for 5 minutes on any matter that is not on the agenda and within the jurisdiction of the city. I'm not looking at Phyllis.
Oh, no, I thought you, I knew you
Mr.
must have been
Bumgarner, you may
talking
have the podium first.
Chris and I have talked a little bit about this, but I wanted to bring it to you other four guys' attention. He brought up the fact that your permitting system is at best archaic. One of the things that I found when I got to Choteau is there was no information available to me as a new homeowner is what can you, what can't you do? And Chris and I visited a little bit about this, and he said that the chamber has, I think, a pretty good thing of what businesses are in Choteau, what's available and everything else. I think in the permitting system might be something you guys could just think about, is that we come up with a packet that new homeowners get. And the real catch here is that you've got to have all of your realtors on board, and even anybody who is selling privately on board, that a new person should be able to get this and says, okay, here's what you can do, here's what you can't do. If you need to do this on your house, here's what's allowed, here's what's not allowed, or here's how you go about doing that. So that there's a very strong clarity in how you approach whatever you want to do. I've been cross-threaded with the city with this wall thing, and we just went to trial today, or not trial, but a hearing. And so we'll see how the judge rules on that. But that's an issue where I was told by someone that I could do this, but I didn't know that you had to have it written down on a permit. So I think that those things, if we could come up with a way to approach the new people coming to town so that they're not completely just lost, I think that'll help. And I'd be willing to help with that. If that's something that you guys need a volunteer for, well, get a hold of me.
I have a question for you. Would the rules be, so the rules would be applied?
It's a comment period, Nate. It's not a question and answer. You can catch it afterwards.
Okay.
Do you want the podium? No? Anybody else tonight? Mr. Rich?
I mean, not yet. It's not a real answer for this.
Rich Lusky, Choteau. Had my first car show this week, or last Wednesday. It was awesome.
Total number?
What's that?
Total number of cars?
Total number of cars, about 30. Total number of people, maybe right at the 50 mark. They all were pretty good at social distancing, not gathering except for being in the ice cream parlor, standing in line. Everything went good. appreciate you letting me have it again this year. Hopefully next one's gonna be just as good, bring people into the.
Next date is?
Next date is July 8th. Wednesday, July 8th. So I just want to comment on that. Thank you very much.
Was there cars that people stayed away from? You know, it's like we brought more Dodges than.
My cars. When I call it the rat trap, it's going to be, people don't want to get around it.
Anybody else?
Did you have your radio flyer?
Yeah, I'll
No, it's not.
Nate,
done yet.
5 minutes. Make sure it's cogent to the city of Choteau.
Wait, where am I?
At the podium,
Oh,
please.
okay. This is,
You know, I actually, as far as, I don't necessarily agree with what, I respect Ed's opinion. I don't necessarily agree with him that it's unclear what the ordinance are, that one has to follow to build. I think that they are available, as in my experience. I actually have them all copied and then, you know, somewhat familiar with it. I mean, I would actually say that it's plain as day that if you were to read through that it's plain as day that the wall that Ed built is in the space that there should not be a wall built. And I'm sympathetic with what he went through, allegedly went through, if indeed that is true. So I am sympathetic of that. And I know that there wasn't a clear decision-making process, and I sense that that's where maybe we're headed when Mark's talking about this. However, I don't think that necessarily, I think if we keep, the more and more we can actually create within this city, that we can create with the knowledge base we have here, the expertise here, and to keep it simple actually is going to be the best solution, and especially right now. And it should not be driven by realtors. Not that realtors shouldn't be allowed in the conversation, but it should not be industry driven. I mean, where do you draw the line? If I'm living in a brick house and my neighbor has a wood house, do they need to build a brick house? If we're both in brick houses, do they need to build a golden brick house? You know, because I built a golden brick house. The dark sky ordinance, or at least entertaining that. We have a real gap right now, actually, that doesn't include a lot of these things. It affects people adversely. The children that are holding their ears when the siren goes off in town, you know, right, that's coming from the city council building. Everyone doesn't like the Opportunity Bank. I can see why. I mean, I don't even like the logo. It's like this Obama logo, and, you know, it's super bright. It hurts your eyes to look at. I understand the decision of the city was it falls within the ordinances, the size of it, the brightness is horrendous.
Still within the city ordinances.
That's right, but that doesn't mean I mean, I think that all of this could be explored. When lighting up, that is an asset of our community, is the darkness in the sky. There's people that are telling me it's increasing. I still want to be able to see the stars. I'm out in Farmington. I mean, I think that that's something very vitally important to consider as far as, you know, the light. I mean, that's actually, you know, you're illuminating your neighbor's yard. You know, I don't see where that's necessarily, now, there could be litigation that could deal with all of that, but I mean, it would be nice to kind of simplify everything, help people do things. You know, we have all these decisions based upon, you know, what we're allowed to do. I am so sick of it. I know everyone else is sick of it too. A lot of people are sick of it anyway, because we have rights, not privileges. I appreciate the Title 40, Title 50, whatever with the public health. I volunteered to help with the rodeo. That offer still stands. They want to have a rodeo on the 3rd. They want to have a rodeo on the 4th. That's their right to do so. I fully support that. I fully support everyone else's rights, fundamental rights, which are protected by the Constitution. The vision for the city, I can't wait to hear that. I already spoke about that for a moment. I'm just really looking forward to that. I think if we focus on being ultra pedantic, we are focusing on actually setting ourselves up for absolute, utter failure. And I really think, especially right now, when it's rule after rule after rule to follow that are affecting real people, affecting their income, their ability to make income, they're expected to deal with it as if it's patriotic. It's not patriotic necessarily. And if it extends, I understand the desire to clarify, and I commend you for actually looking at all of that. I think that's really actually very commendable. What my experience has been with the Port Authority, for instance, is a classic example of an organization that subverted the democratic will of the people, it was actually overwhelmingly voted down at the county level. Mary self-appointed herself. She said, it doesn't matter if I'm voted down. I'm going to just, I'm anointed anyway. I'll do it through the city. It's been done through the city. I've been excluded from their meetings. I've been vehemently attacked by environmentalists. Environmentalists, when there's 1,000 gallons of diesel fuel spilled in our forests, and you have employees for the Nature Conservancy, you have the Forest Service.
We have no purview over that.
I understand, but we're
No, you
allowing
don't
that
understand.
into our city.
Back to the city, please.
Back to the city, so in the city, we have this Port Authority that has a model track record.
Thank you, Nate.
Proponents of the Heritage Act.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
See you on the 30th, folks. Who's going to stay and help me